Hello there, welcome to CHRL, your trusted source for tax information. The government of Ghana introduced new tax policies and amendments in the 2021 budget statement, and they have recently been passed by Parliament. So we are here today with Mr. David Latekwa-Kupon from the Training and Development Department of Ghana Revenue Authority, and he will be giving us some clarity on these new tax policies, specifically referring to the COVID-19 Health Recovery Levy, to find out how they affect the taxpayer. So good morning, Mr. Latekwa-Kupon. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very well, thank you.
That's great. I hope everything is well with you.
By the grace of Almighty God, we're still alive and kicking.
That's nice. So just to begin, can you give us an overview on the VAT and the levies that go along with it?
Thank you very much. VAT, as we all know, is a value-added tax. It's a consumption tax, and it was imposed on goods and services consumed within the country, and also goods and services or goods imported into the country. Okay, so as we all know, over the period, the levies were also included, and these levies, as we know by now, the National Health Insurance Levy, the Debt Fund Levy, and these were all charged by suppliers of goods and services within the country. And these suppliers were expected to register. So you register as an agent of GRA, and then you charge the tax from the consumers and account for the tax to the GRA. And so in a nutshell, when you are dealing with VAT, then these are the areas that you are looking at. Of course, there have been provisions in the Act that impose VAT, that's Act 870, which also made provisions for exemptions from certain, for the tax from certain goods and services that are enjoyed by persons within the country. So that is what I can say for now with regards to giving a brief background to VAT and the levies.
Thank you. So why do we need to pay these levies in addition to paying VAT?
Yeah, indeed. If you look at the structure, you realize that VAT and also the levies are all consumption taxes. But the most important thing to observe or recognize in relation to this is that each one of them is backed by an act of parliament. And so, strictly speaking, they are on their own. Each one of them is on their own. Except that it is the same act of parliament which also enjoins us to be collected by one agency, which in this case is the Ghana Revenue Authority. So, for the purposes of us paying for each of them, it is because of the laws that is backing each and every one of the taxes that we are dealing with. That is what enjoins us to pay for each of them when we make purchases or when we consume goods and services in the economy.
Okay. I'm sure we all know a lot about the National Health Insurance Levy and the Debt Fund Levy because we've been using them for some time. So what is this new COVID levy and what's its purpose?
Yeah, indeed. COVID-19 Health Recovery Levy was imposed in the Act of Parliament from this year, right? And by an act which is the Act 1068, right? As we normally would have called it, yeah. And it is also imposed on goods and services that are consumed in the country. And basically, it comes along with all the various provisions that the other levies also comes along. Except that COVID-19 is expected to be used to help us recover from the devastating economic consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic that struck us from early part of last year, that is early part of 2020, down to this time, actually. So the purpose of the introduction is basically to help recover the effect of the pandemic on economic activities, and also to help the fiscal position of the economy.
Does that mean that this levy has an expiry date after we have recovered from the consequences of the pandemic?
Thank you. As of now, I have not cited any provision that is the levy indicating that it has an expiry date. But what we can say is that since this was imposed by an act of parliament, I believe that when the government of the day realizes that the objectives have been achieved, then the necessary thing may be done as to whether it should be withdrawn or not. That is another issue.
So does this COVID levy affect both types of VAT?
Yes, in a way it affects both types of VAT. And let's take note that when we are talking about both types of VAT, then we are talking about the standard rated VAT and then the flat rated VAT. Okay, and most people may have been thinking that if you look at the wording of the introduction of the act, then they are thinking that oh, this levy just goes straight to the National Health Insurance levy and affect it. No, because it has its own law backing it. The law introduced it at a rate of 1%. And therefore, when it comes to the VAT, you don't add it to the VAT, all right? The 1% is not added to the VAT, whether at the standard rate or at the flat rate. It comes in on its own merit, on its own standard, and it is charged as a straight levy on the cost base for the goods that are being consumed.
Which means it has no effect on the rate for VAT. It doesn't increase the rate in any way.
Not at all. It doesn't increase the rate of VAT at all. Don't forget that these rates have been imposed by an act of parliament. So if you want to change any rates, then it is parliament that must do it. And once the parliament has not indicated that any rate of VAT should be changed, then we don't touch it. Okay, and that is basically the reason why you have an act that is backing the 1% levy. So it stands on its own. Okay, and there are other features that will be associated to the VAT, but not the rate.
Can you run me through an example of calculating this COVID levy? Let's say, for instance, if I buy a phone for 1,000 cedis or a TV for 1,000 cedis, how is the calculation going to be for the standard rates? I'm assuming the phone falls under standard rates.
Well, so in the first place, you want to deal with the levy itself and the VAT as a whole, yes, or the levy alone?
No, both of it.
Okay, so we also know that the levy comes at a rate of 1%, whether you are dealing with flat rate or standard rate.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you say, for example, make a purchase, as you said, a phone, maybe the cost is 1,000 Ghana cedis. Then you are looking at the cost base of the phone is 1,000 Ghana cedis. It is this cost base, on this cost base, that you apply the rate of 1%. Now, if you want, so you apply the rate of 1% in relation to the COVID-19 health recovery levy. Now, so if you look at the relationship between COVID-19 health recovery levy and the VAT, then the levy goes to add to the build up for the taxable value for VAT. All right. So under normal circumstances, if you are dealing with only COVID-19 levy, then you just calculate 1%, add it to the 1,000, and then charge the 12.5% VAT on that amount. Right. But in the current circumstances, just as we mentioned earlier on, COVID-19 health recovery levy, it comes along just like we have the National Health Insurance levy, and then we have the Debt Fund levy. And so in this event, If you are dealing with standard, then straight away you apply the 2.5% from National Health Insurance Levy on the 1,000 cedis. Then you also apply the same 2.5% on the Get Fund Levy on the 1,000 cedis. And then you apply the 1% COVID-19 Health Recovery Levy on the 1,000 cedis. So when you have done that, you get this amount for the three of them. You add it to the 1,000 cedis to give you a figure which we call the taxable value for the VAT. All right. So let's say, so if 2.5% of 1,000 will give us what? Is it 25, right? Yeah. Is it 25 or 25? Good. So if it's 25, then you have 2.5%, 25, another 2.5%, 25. Yeah. Which will give us what? That is 25 plus 25 is 50. 50, yeah. Right. Then you have 1% will give us what? 10. Mm-hmm. So you add a 10 to the 50, you get what? 60. So then you add it to the 1,000, which will give you 1,060. All right. So you get a 1,060. Then you apply the 12.5% on 1,060. That will give you the VAT, right? And all these will be paid separately. Okay. Yeah. Each of them will be paid separately, but then they will all appear on the same tax invoice.
Is the VAT a cost to the business or a cost to the consumer?
Good. Like all taxes, once it is imposed, it comes with an additional cost, and then the cost depends on where the tax is incident. Now, if you are dealing with VAT, the VAT is a consumption tax, so obviously the incidence of the tax is on what? The consumer who purchases the items. So that is what you look at. When it comes to the suppliers, they don't bear the direct cost of the VAT, right? What happens is that they are registered taxpayers and they become like intermediaries or agents for the authority. So they collect the VAT, that means they will charge and collect the VAT and then account for it to the authority. What happens along the line, because those businesses, those taxpayers are not the consumers of those supplies, what happens is that whatever cost that they have incurred as a result of the tax on their purchases, the law allows them to take it as input tax or deduct it as input tax when they have made supplies. Okay, and then when they have done that deduction, the net is what they account for to the authority. Invariably, if you do the build up, you come to the final figure of the tax that is paid by the consumer. That is what is collected by the GRA.
So it means the business is acting as a sort of agent to collect this money and then pass it on to the Ghana Revenue Authority.
Indeed, that is the situation. And then they are placated in a way in the input taxes that they are allowed to deduct. Don't forget that the input tax that they are deducting will not only be limited to the direct item, but any other indirect expenses relating to the supply of that particular product. If they have incurred input taxes on it, then the law allows them to also take it.
I think it's quite clear. Let's take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll talk some more about the COVID-19 health recovery. We are here with Mr. David Latekwa from the Training and Development Department of Ghana Revenue Authority. We've talked a bit about the COVID-19 Health Recovery Levy and the VAT. Right before we went for the break, we were talking about the VAT costs to the business or the consumer. What I want to know is, how do I know if a business is supposed to charge the flat rate or the standard rate?
Okay, thank you. So, like we said earlier on in the discussion, the VAT has been designated into a flat rate and a standard rate. standard rate where you charge at 12.5%, and then the flat rate will be charged at 3%. Now, the important thing, or what divides them, or what actually separates them, is the provision of the law, which indicates that flat rate operators should be those who are either doing wholesaling or retailing of goods and services, or goods generally. And so, if you are a consumer and you want to know whether a taxable person, or you want to know whether you should pay the tax at the flat rate or standard rate, it will depend on where you are taking your supplies from. If it is coming from a standard rated person, then the rate will be 12.5%. But if it is coming from a flat rated person, and these people are the wholesalers of goods or retailers of goods, and they will charge at 3%. Most often, you would find that the certificate that is given to the taxable person will indicate that it is being registered as a flat rate operator or as a standard rated operator. And so those are the things that you can look at.
And how do I know if the invoice that I receive when I purchase something, usually you get an invoice from the supplier?
Yes.
How do you know if this invoice is the right kind of invoice? Because I know there are different invoices, one from GRA, one from the business.
Thank you. Indeed, it is mandatory for all of us who are consumers to ensure that we collect invoices, tax invoices, on purchases that we make. Why? Because when we make those purchases, we will be paying the tax. And if you make a tax, you pay a tax, you are expecting that you get a receipt of a sort, or an invoice to indicate that you have actually paid that tax. So that is the most important thing when you are dealing with the taxes, especially when you are dealing with the consumption taxes. Then here, to be able to ensure that the right invoice is being issued, first and foremost, they want to find out whether the invoice that is being issued is a Commissioner General's invoice or that of another. And so that is the basic. But I want to add here that when it comes to the invoices, there are certain businesses or suppliers of goods and services that have been granted special dispensation or permission to print their own invoices. So those ones too are things that we can take note of when we are making purchases. We have to take note of that. So you may not get the Commissioner General's embossed tax invoice from a person who has been granted permission to issue his own invoice. And that's the only difference that you can get. However, all those invoices must have an indication of the taxes that have been collected when you make those purchases and are issued to you.
Is there any additional knowledge or information that we should have on this new COVID-19 health recovery levy?
Very well. As mentioned earlier, you recognize that COVID-19 health recovery levy comes in the same form as the National Health Insurance levy, as well as the Get Fund levy came in. And they are being all collected by the Ghana Revenue Authority. The form in which were prescribed by the Parliament for collection will be the same vehicle that was being used to collect the VAT. So you realize that when the law was passed, the provision was that when it comes to VAT, there are sections that deal with exemptions. So VAT, even though it's been imposed on goods and services that are purchased in the economy, there are certain goods and services that are exempt. And so when you go to the first schedule of the Act 870, you find this there. Okay. The same provision applies to the COVID-19 health recovery levy. Okay. The same provision for exempts You also have provisions for zero ratings. So when goods are being exported, they are exported at zero rates. Okay, this provision relating to VAT is also applicable to the COVID-19 health recovery levy. The same provision, VAT provisions, which deals with relief supply when persons enjoy goods and services. The law has made provisions for certain persons to be relieved of their tax. If one is relieved under VAT, that person will also be relieved under the COVID-19 health recovery levy. So these are things that we have to. However, the COVID-19 health recovery levy, when it's paid by businesses can use it as to what do you call it, as allowable deductions under income tax purposes. Okay, so under VAT it's a straight levy, but for a business you can use it as what allowable deductions when you are dealing with your income taxes, and that is how it is.
Thank you. What's the date of implementation for this new levy?
Okay, so this came into effect from 1st May 2021. What it means is that all businesses that are registered or all VAT taxpayers must also begin to charge the COVID-19 health recovery levy from 1st of May 2021. All right. If you do not, as a registered taxpayer or a registered business that is collecting the VAT and the other levies, and you ignore the COVID-19 health recovery levy from the 1st of May, what you are dealing with is that you are committing an offense. And there are various provisions in the Revenue Administration Act that will deal with this offense that you have committed. So my best advice to you is that irrespective of the situation, the conditions that you find yourself in, once you are a registered taxable person or taxpayer and you are dealing in the supply of goods and services that on which the COVID-19 health recovery levy is applicable, just go ahead and charge the tax and account for it accordingly.
Yes. So in accounting for it, is there any provision that GRA has made in this era of COVID so that we don't have to come to the office every time we need to do something or do some transactions with the GRA?
Yeah, yes. And it's a very important provision because as per the protocols that come along with the COVID-19, how we will keep ourselves under COVID-19 situation, we have several protocols. So social distancing being one of the main ones. I mean, if you don't have anything to do in town, just stay at home. GRA has to also put itself in that environment. Mostly taxpayers or our taxpayers come to the office to pay or account for the taxes that they have collected. Now, because of the pandemic, but even before then, GRA had been in the process of trying to develop a digital environment so that persons will pay the tax or account for the tax in the comfort of their homes if they do not want to come to the office, if for any reason. And with the coming of COVID-19, it has accelerated the push for us to be able to get our digitization going. And for that matter, I want to introduce to you, those of you who know already know, but those who don't know, that we are informing you through this means that we have a digital system for paying for our taxes. So you have a website. We go to www.gra.gov.gh, and when you go there, there are all the various tax handles and tax issues that you want to deal with, including payments. You find there, and you can file your taxes and pay in the comfort of your homes.
So even my personal income tax, I can do it all online?
You can do all of them online without any difficulty at all. In fact, I filed my taxes just within April. I filed it online. I didn't have to go to the office to do it. And so I think that any other person who wants to, who's a registered taxpayer and have to file the taxes can stay in the comfort of their offices or their homes and file the tax. Just go to www.gra.gov.gh and you'll file your tax humbly.
Thank you so much. Do you have any final message or comments for our taxpayers or potential taxpayers who might be watching?
Very well. Thank you very much. And indeed, everything to do with tax starts with registration. So if you are a business out there and you undertake, you supply goods and services for which the tax is applicable, or which is a taxable, you are making taxable supplies, then the law requires that you come in and register. And then when you are registered, you must then charge the tax, especially when we are dealing with the indirect taxes, so VAT, Get Fund Levy, National Health Insurance Levy, and now COVID-19 Health Recovery Levy. You must charge those taxes and then account for these taxes to GRA. Again, when you are making these supplies that you are charging, ensure that you are using the Commissioner General's tax invoice. Very, very important. That is a way in which we can monitor and track the taxes that are being collected. And that is what is also going to ensure that we are able to account effectively for the taxes that have been generated within the economy. So all businesses that are taxable or that are engaged or making taxable supplies are required to register, charge the tax, and account for it. Issue invoices on the taxes collected. File their returns on the due date. And we also know that the provision that will be made for filing of returns is that at the end of a period, you file the return by the last working day of the following period. So for example, we are in May. When May ends, all taxes that have been collected are expected to be filed from the beginning of June to the last working day of June. But you don't have to sit at home and say, I'm waiting for last day or last 2 days. Make sure you have every opportunity. Once you have done your computations and you are okay with it, you can file it. You can come in as early as possible and file your return. I want to also add that there are withholding VATs. There is withholding VAT. That return must be filed by the 15th. Okay, so it's like in the middle of the period of the month we file the return. Okay, so that is that. So it alternates with the main VAT proper. Okay, so you file your withholding VAT about 2 weeks, then you file the VAT proper consequently. And I think that if you're able to do that, I also want to just use this opportunity to let us all make a conscious effort to embrace the taxes as they have come in. It is very difficult to pay taxes. However, we also know that without taxes, we cannot develop. These are the lifeline of the nation is tax. So if we refuse to pay our taxes, then we cannot be demanding the provision of goods, amenities that are required for our development in the country. So let us all make a conscious effort to pay the taxes that have been imposed. And as time goes on, we believe that we are able to generate enough resources. We will be able then to also meet the President's requests and demand that we build a Ghana which is what? Devoid of what? Aid. We get to Ghana beyond aid. And if that is done, you and I will be happy for it. And then we can also showcase our nation to other people to emulate. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for taking time to come here and speak to us. And thank you too. We hope that you've learned a lot and you are fully educated about your rights and obligations as a taxpayer. The more taxes we pay, the better Ghana will be. That's what we hope for. And so this is GRA TV, your trusted source for tax information. Until next time, thank you.